Hello, I'm Ebony McKenna and we are now up to part 3 of the Working with Scene Cards webinar. And obviously if you haven't seen part 1 or part 2, I do highly recommend you look at those first because it will make sense. But then if you're a huge fan of Memento or Inception, hey, go ahead, watch it in whatever order you like. So at the end of the part 2, we talked about seeing a card number 10, which is a reflective moment, which is the black moment. Now this is when your character can be truly reflective and think back on all the mistakes she's made, how it's led to this point, how in some ways this point was always going to be inevitable. You may have heard the saying by Donald Mars about make it bad then make it worse. Well, this is the worst things can possibly become in your character's world, not in the whole world, but in your character's world. So the thing that she fears most has happened. She's in a deep pit of despair and now she has to climb out. So we are launching now into Act 3. Okay, so this is the black moment, is the last big turning point of the second part of Act 2, and we're launching into Act 3. So card number 11 is a new plan. This is active all over again. Your character, your heroine, needs to state how, well, not necessarily all the details of how she's going to do, but what she's going to do, what she's going to achieve from now. And you need to state it because, again, as the writer, you know what's going to happen most of the time. Sometimes the characters lead us astray. That's okay. The new plan means have your heroine either think or declare what she's going to achieve now. So the new plan's launch into Act 3. She states the plan or her intention or the end result. For example, I'm going to win him back. It can be as simple as that. Card number 12 is wonderful. As you can see, it's called Storming the Castle. It's active, active, active. This is a wonderful moment in any book or movie where you have your big final battle. Now, obviously, if it's an action movie, this will be the big final shootout or something. Storming the castle can be a literal castle, it can be a dog pound, it can be a Death Star, or storming the castle guarding his heart. Okay, so see it more as a figurative thing as opposed to a literal castle. And then, of course, one of my all-time favourite books and films is The Princess Bride. And there's that wonderful line, good luck storming the castle. They go off to storm the castle. And it happens at this point in the story. And it's absolutely wonderful. So the storming the castle will take place over multiple scenes. You will have a false victory and then possibly a defeat. And in fact, if you make it too easy for your heroine to win, it won't be satisfying. Even though if you've got a romance, you know the reader knows there's going to be a happy ever after. The entertainment is how they get there. If it all happens too easily, you're going to lose your reader, and the reader's going to think, oh, I just wasted my time. What you're doing now is you are promising your reader that you know how to deliver a really good story. So have a false victory and then a defeat, and then your heroine needs to make even more effort so that she can get her final victory and her happy ever after. You've got to make the heroine and the hero really work hard for it, because then it really, really satisfies the reader. Trust me, I read a lot of books, and when they haven't had to work hard enough for it, or when something's made a victory just out of coincidence, it drives me insane. So we've now got to card 13, which is after the storming the castle, we have our closing image. And here's my great photograph where I've put things out on the carpet and you can see the shadow of my hands taking a photo. But so our 13 cards, number 12 is Storming the Castle, number 13 is the closing image. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put out our 13 major structure cards, put them on the floor, put them on the table, pin them on the wall, however you like to look at it. Put them out in that grid shape, put lots of space between each one, because some cards are going to have lots of scenes around them, other cards might only have one or two, and that's okay. But what you do is you put your main cards out first, and then you start to sort which ones of your little scene cards belong around each area, and you will start to see that you might have you've got nothing at the moment for the midpoint. That's okay. You can cheat it and put it back in later. You might only have one small scene for the black moment and you need that there's more work. Look at how I've got this. I've got a fair few for bad guys close in. I've completely covered up the ticking clock and the black moment's got a few cards under it. But then I've only got a couple of things for the new plan, not much for storming the castle, and only a couple of bits for the closing image. So the closing image doesn't need as much, but you can see there, I'm missing some stuff for storming the castle. That's not enough. So then you start to really sort it out. You will see what needs filling in and what needs cutting, because what you want to do is create something that looks as balanced as possible. And the way around that, what you do is grab another one of those scene cards, blank cards, and write new scene here if you need to, because that way you know that when you get to that point, that's where you need to write a new scene or develop more in that scene. So if you've got, roughly 8 scenes around bad guys close in, and that's at card number 8, then look at the other side, on the other side of the earlier part of your novel, and see how many scenes you've got there. So what you're looking for is a rough balance between the two. And then when you work out if you've got all your scenes in order, you might find some scenes you think, I don't know where this goes. And that's okay, because if you don't know where it goes, try taking it out completely. It might have some really interesting information in there about the character. That's okay. You can weave that back into a different scene. And then what you do is you stack them all up in order. You put them on your desktop, and you have scene number 1 at the top. And when you start revising, you can focus on each individual scene as you start your revisions. And you don't have to think about the entire novel in one go. Even if when you put all your cards out, you can see the whole novel in one go. When you stack your cards up, you can focus on one scene at a time. And I find that really helps me, and I hope it helps you. Another thing you can do is if you introduce new elements and new things at the start of the book, you can write a matching scene and add that later, and know that you can write that later and you've written your note in and remind it to yourself on doing that. And so basically that's how we use our major 13 romantic cards to help structure a romance novel. So now what? I want you to be ruthless. I want you to remove the bloated scenes. There are so many times where I have found myself, I think I'm writing my way into the book, and ultimately the reader doesn't need it later. I need it at the time so that I can get to know my character. That's great. Take it out in later drafts. It's ruthless. It's like when people say kill your babies. Yeah, you kind of have to do that. But overall, what you're looking for is balance. Now, have a check on your major 13 points. Now, there will be more points in your book depending on how big it is, or whether it's actually just a novella, or whether it's a sweeping saga over multiple books. That's okay. But keep track of what scenes might be missing, and make sure you've stated the plan. Where there are times where the character needs to say out loud or have one of those moments of thought where she has to say what she wants out of life. Because if you don't have that, then it feels to the reader like the story isn't going anywhere. Now, of course, you can absolutely overwhelm them with the most beautiful writing in the world, and you could get away with not having that. But very few, go for it if you want, but I'm wondering why you're watching a webinar about structure if you're going to throw all the structure out the window. But hey, that's just me. So when you're doing revisions, focus on each individual scene. Make sure if you add new scenes at one end of the book, if you add a new scene in the start of Act 2, make sure it's got balance at the other side. If you find that you want something to happen in the second half of Act 2 and you need, you might need a broomstick, you might need a roadmap. Whatever it is, make sure it's seen in an earlier scene. That's SEEN. Make sure the characters are aware of it being there. It can't just turn up out of nowhere. Be kind to yourself, okay? Give yourself permission to make mistakes. And again, these are some of my favourite books about structure and writing, and I highly recommend all 4 of them. Thank you very much for watching these webinars, and all the very best with your writing, and I hope you have a fantastic writing career. Thank you very much.